Okay, Scott, it says we're live. I'm gonna pop around here and see if we are, but we should be live. And it's good to connect. And congrats on the success of your book. It looks like your book has been doing really well. So, congrats on that.
Well, no, thank you so much. A labor of love, like a lot of things. This is the book, but excuse me, bear with me. The no, great fun. We lived in the healthcare and business world for a long time. Wrote another book and was a long story behind it, but a great pleasure. And thank you so much for having me today, Ryan. What a pleasure to visit with you. Thank you.
Yeah, yeah. I'm gonna share the book real quick now to the book so that people can check it out. Okay, and I love the title of the book because building great businesses. And I've, it's one of those things. I was lucky enough to talk to probably almost 400 owners now in the past 3 or 4 years, and so you hear a lot of stories about people who have done great and people who have tried to do great. And um, the best I can describe my experience is it's like going to an ice cream store. It's all ice cream. It's different flavors, different toppings, cones, cups, different amounts of scoops, but it's all kind of the same. Um, but it manifests a little bit different. What has been your experience with the ones who can build a great business and the ones who struggle to do that?
Sure. No, at the end of the day, we think about a few different things. One, if you're actually going to build a business, at least from my experience, you better end up being compelled by it, being obsessed by it, having a lot of passion and drive to build it. So
Mhm.
it's very hard in my experience to do it without being really focused and really motivated to do so. And it might not be that whatever you're trying to do, whether it's build an M&A practice, build a legal practice, build a consulting firm, build a media company, whatever you're trying to do, my experience is that where I've had success, it's been when I've really been caught by it, excited about it, motivated and passionate about it. And where I have failed, it's where I'm sort of trying to, but not really driven and motivated to do so. And we've seen both those
Yeah.
things. Then to take the next step, we think about almost always, at least for me, building in niches, building with great teams. Very hard to do alone. I hear all this talk about the solopreneur. I'm not a huge believer in it, but building great teams, building in niches, much easier to build in a niche where you can really identify who your core customer or who you're really trying to work with is. And then it's really product market fit and combined with what we call customer centric. So product market fit means whatever you're building, whatever you're selling, whatever service you're doing, somebody's got to really want that. They've got to
Mhm.
really need that. And I've heard it described great by the founder of a company called Lean Toss. Is it something that somebody wants to have or needs to have? Is there someone that really needs it or really strongly desires the product or service that you're putting out there? And can you identify who that is and quite frankly add value to that company or business? So we think about it as you have to be passionate and excited about it. You got to find your niche, your product market fit. In my experience, it's almost always doing it with great teams and building great teams to do it. I think this myth and discussion of the solopreneur is well overdone. I think, very hard to do things without help, without others as well along for the journey. So Ryan, we sort of start with those concepts. We've had great success in building a media company and also building a law practice in the healthcare world. We've had less success in some other endeavors. We've served on a
Yeah.
bunch of boards. Some have gone great, those companies. Some have, one sold for nearly $1 billion. Many others have done not so great. We've started things that have gone okay. We've started things that have gone poorly. We've invested in things. Some have gone great. Many have not gone great and have had a chance through all of these things to see a lot of what we think works and doesn't work.
Yeah. Okay. So I'm gonna push back slightly on the solopreneur. I'm a solopreneur, but I get what you're saying, and what you're because it seems to me that a lot of people that advertise the solopreneur stuff, they don't really realize that to really reach escape velocity, you're going to have to build a team, or you're going to have to find a way into a really high ticket niche. And a lot of people just don't have the knowledge or skill sets to know where those niches are or how to enter them. And so they really get stuck. You'll see people advertising 10K a month or 20K a month. It's like, okay, that's great. Nothing wrong with that. But understand, like, that is a long haul for a long period of time if you never can escape that. And so I think that it is a good way for people if they want to transition from a job to a solopreneur to maybe more of what you're talking about. Um, But I do
and
agree.
there's nothing wrong with being a solopreneur. I just think for most people it's limited. That you've
Yeah,
got your own
I'm with
business.
you. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, far better for many of us to be a solopreneur and have our own job, create our own job, than a job for somebody else. If and I view there are stages in a business. Many businesses. The oldest example was the person who ran one Subway. They at least owned their own business, but they had bought themselves a job. They were working really hard. They had their own business. They did have to have somewhat of a team because they'd have people that take care of business and take care of customers and stuff like that. But once they had 5 Subways, they were out of having a job, and now they had people running that or working with them to run that. And similar with many things. I think like there's many things. People with a small business, they've created themselves a job and a living, and they have control over it. And that's a
Mhm.
fantastic thing. That's a
Mhm.
fantastic thing. Far better. I always viewed it when I was building a legal practice, I needed to have a few $100,000 in legal business to be able to walk out the door if I ever wanted to from the law firm and just run my own business.
Mhm.
I couldn't make a great living, but I could make a good living.
Right.
Between 300,000 bucks and all the expenses I would have, I could at least make a living as relatively a sole practitioner. We built the media business that is a large scale media business, so a wholly different thing. But I think what I take umbrage to is you see solopreneurs online that say that they're making tens of millions of dollars. And
Yeah.
I have a hard time seeing that. I just don't,
Yeah.
because even if you're doing that, you've got somebody doing your tech, you've got somebody doing your distribution, you've got somebody doing
Yeah.
something. You
Yeah.
might be 1099ing a lot of people.
Right.
You might be using
Right.
a lot of contractors. I'm a huge fan of outsource everything you don't have to own as an
Mhm.
employee and build internally. Huge fan. You could certainly be a solopreneur. Like if I wanted to make my next year paid public speaking, I could largely be a solopreneur. I can't make the kind of money I have with a scalable business, but I could maybe
Right.
make a living. And so
Right.
there's not, but what I take sort of umbrage against is people talking about the solopreneur that's built the multi-billion-dollar business. I just don't see it. I just
Right.
there's
Yeah.
probably some, but it's
No,
unusual.
well, okay. So on that, I would say yes, 99.9% of the time you're right. And the ones that have what you've just described, contractors and stuff like that. So it's all about the wording, stuff like that. Could you make a good living as a solopreneur? Yes. You have to have certain skill sets to kind of get to that mid high six figures velocity. The multi-million dollar things, no, that's really tough. Maybe the diamond in the rough. What I would say though is what you're describing. I think a lot of small business owners, they get a good business and it provides them a good lifestyle, but then they go to sell or go to look at exit and it's not worth nearly what they thought because they kind of had a solopreneur mindset and they didn't realize it's a great journey, but you have to understand that's a game you're playing. If you're playing the scalable, sellable business, that's a different game. They're all just games, but what game are you trying to play?
And I love your take on that. You could certainly run a small business, be a solopreneur. There are a million of people that do this. They run a
Yeah,
counseling practice, they run a coaching
right.
practice, they do a million things, and it's fantastic. And for many of those people, probably myself included, better that than working for a large organization where you can be fired at
Mhm.
any time. We don't control
Right.
your life. I
Yes,
mean,
exactly. Yeah.
and so I think that's fantastic. I just see so many people advertising as a solopreneur and talking about building multi-million-dollar businesses. I think that's really hard as a solopreneur, and I don't often see it because
Yeah.
I just think it's hard to deliver the type of service, the type of experience for people that you want solely by yourself and trying to build that type of business where your customers have that kinds of demands.
Yeah. Yeah. The only way that I'm aware of it is if you're a tech guru, which I am not, and maybe you could sell some kind of SaaS product, but you really have to understand distribution and marketing. Really, you got to be good at that because you can have the great product, but no one buys it. Or you've got to play in the really lucrative high end referral business that you can just refer stuff out. But then you're spending a bunch of time networking and stuff like that. So I am with you that most of the times solopreneurs will be better understanding what they're getting themselves into. But then small business owners, what I've seen is that they've not really built something that is truly what I would say from what they thought was a great business because they get to be 62, 68, and they want to go exit this thing and it's not worth but a few million bucks, and they need a lot more than that. And it's like, oh, I feel bad for them because they didn't all the stuff that you talked about earlier. They didn't do, and so now it's costing them later in life.
We always think about, we love that. And we always think about two concepts: the balance sheet that you have in the business. What do you own in the business and what's that value? And are you building your balance sheet outside the business so that you're not reliant on the exit of it? So let's say you can't exit how you want to. Well, make sure you're putting away 10 to 20% a year, or whatever the number is, that at least when you get to that age where you don't have the energy to run that as a solopreneur, you've at least put yourself in a decent position. Because it's very hard to sell a solo business where you're the person, you're the deal, because people often need that person to make it going forward.
Well, and I talked to an owner the other day, and I can't remember the numbers. I put a tweet out there or something about this, but it's like he got to 30 to 40 million in revenue. Not a solo, obviously had a what we call a business, and he went bankrupt. And he went bankrupt because he was bidding jobs for 3 million. His contractors and everyone else was billing him 3.5 million. And turns out he was sending out invoices at 9 o'clock at night. So he wasn't even able to keep up with what was going on, and he went bankrupt. And it was a terrible story because he went from like nothing to 30, 40 million in like a year or two, like crazy growth. And so when I think about building a great business, I think that's part of what a lot of owners, they struggle with the letting go of the identity that they need to be the face of everything. And it's like, well, if we're being honest, one day me and you will pass on, and then about a week later, most people will forget we ever existed. It's like you got to quit overthinking that people care that much about you being the owner. They do when you help them. But go ahead. Yeah.
But you are so right on, because this is what we've always looked at. Like, to feel good about yourself, you want to be indispensable. To build a great business, you want to be dispensable. Do people follow that? So when
That's
you have,
good.
when
Say that again. No,
yes.
Say that again.
So,
That's so good.
What happens is, and this is the transition that every entrepreneur or CEO has to make at some point. You are fully engaged when you are indispensable. You are the person, the woman, the man, the CEO, the founder, who's at the center of everything. And this feels very good for a long period of time. But if you want to have value in the business, that's when you're indispensable. If you want to have real value in the business for exit, you have to make yourself dispensable, where you're not needed. They're different periods of business life. When you're really running it, it is your drive, your thing. It's where your ego is wound around, and a lot of other things. When somebody ultimately buys it or invests in it, they have to make themselves not as dependent upon you. It's you have to move to being dispensable versus indispensable. And those are very hard transitions. It's almost like in a running a company, you don't want to be too reliant on any one customer.
Right.
In running a business, you ultimately don't want to be too reliant on any one leader. You want to have a business that's broad enough where you've got multiple great leaders. So if something happens to somebody, the business isn't dead, isn't in trouble. And those are very hard emotional evolutions for founders, CEOs, drivers, because there's a lot of ego tied up in being the leader, being the CEO, being the founder. But your business can have a lot more value if you can get past that point. And that's a very hard transition for a lot of us.
And I know the cliche right now is owner dependency, but it's the one thing that I've tried to push to owners to say, hey, if you fix owner dependency, it makes you look at stuff so much differently. So if you have customer concentration and you have one sales guy and you're the sales guy, okay, you can live with that risk. But you got to hire someone else and you got customer concentration, you might want to go get some more clients. You might want to spread out that risk, because owner dependency, oddly enough, the more you remove yourself, you then begin to look at it like a buyer might for your business, go, oh, we can't have this, we can't have this. And it begins to make you to fix those things. You become less relevant, but your business becomes way more valuable. It's weird, but it's exactly how it works.
It's 100% true. It's 100% true. And those are very hard transitions for CEOs and founders to look at it differently. Are they building a business that is not as dependent upon themselves? And those are very hard things from a sort of ego mindset, what fills your bucket mindset, and so forth. I've always said that being in a spot where you're not dependent upon yourself is more profitable. Being in a spot where you're in the middle of it is more gratifying. And they're two different things. So you when you are in the middle, in the heart of it, it's much more exciting, it's much more engaging, and a lot of it's much more satisfying. And when you've moved on to that, where you've built a business that's big enough, profitable enough, that it's not dependent upon you, it's more profitable and it's often less satisfying.
Yeah, well, I was talking to an owner the other day, and I said, in my opinion, this is just me. If you have a business that you can exit for today and it gives you retirement money, true retirement money, you have to give that a long look because you have built something very impressive, right? And COVID 2.0, tariffs, wars, whatever could wipe that out, or you have sickness, health, whatever can wipe that out. You got to give it a long, hard look. You don't have to do it. Now, if you're in that SBA range, the 2 million, okay, that's a different story because that's not true retirement money. There's going to take some time. But if you're in that retirement money, you need to give it a hard look. And kind of the feedback you get from those guys is, well, what am I going to do? And I'm like, well, if you've built the business that gets you that kind of retirement money, you should have the ability to go start figuring out what you're going to do now. Like you have the time to go figure out what you're going to do. And so part of I think what part gets lost is if you built what you're saying is a great business, and I would agree, the owners they ascend to the top and it's like, what do they do? And for me, it's like, start planning your next phase, charities, churches, whatever it might be. Go do that stuff. You have the time now before you sell.
No, but I think that what happens is it is for many people that are driven people that are build businesses that are entrepreneurs, that change and pivot, and there's billions written about this is and a lot of counselors make their living around this, is a much harder thing to do than it seems like it should be. Like trying to design your life for that next stage when you're no longer at the center of stuff. First of all, I agree with you, Ryan, 100%. The world is full of risk. I grew up in a family that was going broke constantly. So when I had the chance to de-risk at some point, I did so. Did I ultimately maximize every single dollar in the long run? Maybe, maybe not. But I was able to de-risk, put ourselves as a family in a great financial situation, and we had to do it. And it's a very real thing. Now, if I was born rich and had a ton of money, I might have never done some of the exits we've done over the years. But I didn't have that opportunity, and so we were able to de-risk, take some of them off the table, strengthen the balance sheet outside of the business to go with the balance sheet in the business. But that is a real evolution, and then figuring out what to do. If your business was so much of your personal purpose every day, figuring out what to do next, I agree with you 100%. That shouldn't stop you from doing what you need to do economically if you need to protect your family. 100% agree. Couldn't agree more. But at the same time, it is a real issue trying to figure out what you're doing next.
Oh, I'm sympathetic to it. I'm agree. I'm saying that if you have built this good business, you can now start to focus on that while the business has the value. Because as you know, M&A is going to take 6, 9, 12 months to get done. You can begin to work on that. But I want to ask, transition here. You've had experience with private equity, and you mentioned taking chips off the table, de-risking. Right now, it seems that private equity is getting a lot of publicity more than ever before because we're realizing that that private equity is not just the big boys. There's a lot of private equity groups out there. But then some people just seem to hate on the word private equity. And I'm sure some are good, some are bad. But for me, it's not binary. I mean, it's not binary. It's not all negative. There are plenty of good private equity groups. What have you seen are the markers of good private equity versus bad private equity?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question. And I think it's an asset class or group that often gets pulled all together. And private equity over the last couple decades has become much more democratized, meaning there are a ton of different private equity funds of every size and shape. So when you do a transaction with a private equity fund, you are looking for a few different things. You're looking for people that you could do business with going forward. Almost any business you do, you're going to end up in a spot where you're going to have an ongoing relationship. It's not just financial. You got to work with people. And almost any business you're in, there's going to be ups and downs and challenges that you got to figure out. And almost always you're going to have to work with your private equity partner on it. Second, you're looking at value. Like, what value is the private equity fund investing at? How much money you're taking off the table? You know, and is it competitive? Is it what you're looking for? The third is, can you trust them to be good people? And that could mean in both ways. One, to get from point A to point B in doing a transaction. And second is you have to live with them going forward. So you're looking for, you can, there's a balance between optimizing who you want to partner with and how much money you want to take off the table. And those two things they're almost always not going to be perfect. Sometimes you'll have people that are very like the worst of what you think of private equity, who might be $1 higher, $1 million higher, 10 million higher, 100 million higher. And those numbers matter. Those numbers matter.
Yeah.
So if the people that you don't want to work with are going to pay 3% more, you're making a bad decision to go with them. If the people that you hate are paying 100% more, you might have to bite the bullet and do it just out of pure economics. But there are very real differences. It's a lot of talking to other people that have worked with that private equity fund, have had them as an investor. Have they liked working with them? Have they done what they said they would do? Have they been honest to work with? Have they not? It's spending enough time with them. Like we had visited with one private equity fund who invested or looked to invest at one point in one of our businesses, and they were investing at a really nice number, and they were just brutal people. And we just at some point had to decide, if we were exiting entirely, if we were completely going to be out, then okay, as long as they're going to close and pay the right price, we might go.
Right.
But if we actually have to do business with them going forward and have to work with them and have money invested with them, then, absolutely not. Just didn't want to be with them or work with them. We ended up in one of our core businesses with the private equity fund, who just happened to be really good people. It was just the right fit for us. And we've been with them on and off for a long time, but just really a pleasure of people. And it's all over the board. Like private equity funds, you almost have to if you're going to decide who you're going to work for, who you're going to have a job for, there's the objective to it. Like, okay, what are they paying? What is their office like? Who are their customers? And then there's this objective to it. Are you comfortable with them? And ideally, you want some of both. You want to sort of, it's like investing. We always talk about behavioral finance versus optimal finance, and they're not perfectly correlated. Behavioral finance might be, I'm more risk averse than would be the way to maximize my investment returns, because I can't sleep at night if I've done too much risk. And it's very similar to your private equity fund that you invest with. They're all over the board in terms of temperament, in terms of people, in terms of financial engineering versus being good business stewards and good partners. Some of them want to over leverage up, and that can be very scary. Others are more of a balance.
Yeah. Okay. Quick shout out to Brad here. Brad, good to see you, buddy. I don't know if you know Brad Smith. Scott, you should connect with him. He's great on a lot of stuff, especially tied to X and YouTube ads. But anyways, YouTube in general. I think, yeah. So you're right that some PE can just be total jerks to deal with. They're almost kind of a little bit arrogant. And I think that's where a lot of owners, as they're growing their business, it is helpful, though, to see how PE might look at their business from a valuation standpoint, because they're going to go, well, what about this? Why this? They're going to ask the questions. And I think when you're talking about building a great business, I'm curious. Well, actually, stop there. How would you define building a great business? Like what was in a sentence? Yeah.
Sure. So we always view there's 5 phases of a business. The phases are idea, and I'll take you back to the question. Everybody has an idea. Having an idea is almost meaningless today. I mean, it's unusual that it's truly perfect, but so idea. Second is you've actually developed a product and service. And this is good. If you talk about a funnel, this has moved you much further than just an idea, because so many people have an idea. A much smaller percentage actually get to the spot of actually having a product or service. That's the next one. The third is you actually have revenues. So, so many people get into this mistake of they either do one or two things. They talk to every one of their friends about, is this a good idea? Is it a good business? I built this great product. I got this great service. And talking to your friends is great for getting a beer. It is meaningless for business. What I mean by that is,
Yes.
what I mean by that is, many people are very like scared to actually talk to customers, to real paying customers. And it's not until you really talk to customers or potential customers that you know, do you really have a product or service that people want or not? So the third concept is you've got a product or service and you've got revenues. People are actually buying what you're selling. The fourth is that you're profitable. So for example, I could give away a ton of books or I could give people money to buy books, but that's not profitable. That's a
Right.
good advanced hobby. It might serve other purposes, but I'm not making money in that way. The next thing is, are you profitable or not? Are you bringing in more money than you're spending? I can have a great sales team, but if I'm spending $200,000 a year on salespeople and they're bringing in 200,000 a piece, and the cost of
Yeah.
delivery is another 200,000, I'm losing money. I've got revenues,
Right.
not profits. And the fifth thing is, can you scale? Or are you so dependent upon the owner and a few people that you can't scale? Or like in some businesses, many consulting businesses, it's an hour in, it's an hour out. Whereas in other businesses, the more that we sell, the more money that we're making because the costs don't grow at the same pace that the sales grow at. And so when I think about great businesses, I think about, have you gotten to profitability? Have you gotten great people? Are you not so customer dependent on any specific customer? Are you not so customer concentrated? Are you not so people dependent? Meaning people, you got to have great people, but you're not so dependent upon one or two people that if you lose that person, you're sort of done. You're sort of really in trouble. So I think about, we think about the word, we think about the concept of being anti-fragile. If we have customer concentration, the key is we add additional customers and take care of that customer that's so important to us.
Mhm.
If we have great people, it's the same concept. How do we keep that person, those leaders that are so important to us, and add great leaders? So when I think about great businesses, I think about the customer really wants what you're selling. So you've got revenues and profits. You've got great people. You're not so dependent upon one or two people. You've got great customers, so you're not overly customer concentrated. That's sort of what I think about, and then you get to the next level. And this is more challenging in today's world. Are they sustainable businesses? And what are the threats to the business? And can you keep on growing or maintain the business, notwithstanding all the changing dynamics out there in the business world?
Yeah. Well, it's a thing to where, talking to your friends, how many ideas my friends have told me are great that no one ever paid me a dollar for. Oh, this is genius. And you go to the market and no one wants it. It's like, oh, okay. It's in the old adage is it takes 100 no's to get a yes. Well, sometimes it's 100 no's and you never get the yes, but you got to get those no's. You just have to get those no's, and it's scary, but you just got to do it.
Ryan, we couldn't agree more. We think this concept of actually, we tell everybody, and you see this in technology and software, people building great software, great technology, but they're scared to actually talk to customers. And so we tell everybody, when you're starting a technology company, a software company back in the day, you have to do two things right away. You got to be building technology and you got to be talking to customers right away. Because it is so easy to get caught up in brilliantly developing technology, product, service. But if that product, service, technology doesn't have a customer that wants it, it's what we call an advanced hobby versus truly a business. And so we always talk to people about commercializing early, talking to customers early. And it is what it is. There's almost no way around that to really figure out whether you've got something the market really wants.
So, how do you balance? Because one of the things that I've struggled with is the balance of talking to customers to see if you have a good offer or not, but also realizing if you're Elon Musk, you can put an offer out there and it's going to sell because you're Elon Musk, right? If you're a nobody, you're going to struggle to get in front of enough people to see if the offer is even a good offer. So, like, how do you balance that out? Understand that most of us are not Elon Musk, so we're trying to get our offer out there. Like, how many people do we have to talk to get a good read of the offer?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And we're a huge fan of this. There's this combination of mass marketing versus one-on-one contact. And they're two different things. And I think it's very easy in our world to do like 1,000 direct messages, an idea, and see what feedback you get. It's hard in our world to pick up the phone, to call, sit down with 10 potential customers and understand, is there really an interest or not? And I think ultimately you have to test with a little bit of mix of both, but it's the harder part is actually sitting down, calling, talking to 10 people and saying, is this something you want to sponsor? Is this something you want to buy? Because that's very real. And most of us don't like that very binary discussion of yes or no. But I think for most people, Bill Ackman says this often, you got to get used to being people say no to you. You got to get used to it if you want to be successful in business. But you know, you're absolutely right. I just think those are the hard things. Like there's a lot of things you could sell that you're selling for 10, 20, 50 bucks a piece that you could do through mass marketing. But if you want to sell larger ticket items, if we say, I don't want to sell anything for less than $1,000 ticket, I don't want to sell anything for less than $10,000, whatever the number is, the higher up you get, the more that sales is very relational, very one-on-one, very much talking to people. And it's almost like getting in the door. Like if I'm starting something in a certain sector, I'm not going to get in the door to talk to the CEO of a large company. It's going to be very unlikely. I'm more likely going to build it with small customers first, really trying to figure out my value proposition, and then going up market from there.
No, and I think I love that. And the only thing I'd add is I think the crucial thing, at least for me, that I found is I'll go talk to someone and I'll have thought about the pitch, the offer, the words, and then if I'm not listening to what they're saying back to me, because oftentimes I've found that I'll say something to someone and what they say back doesn't make sense. It's like then my pitch wasn't even worded in a way to communicate what I wanted them to hear. It's like they start saying stuff back to me. I'm like, wait, why are you saying that? That doesn't make sense. And it's not a them problem. It's a me problem. I sat down and thought I crafted the perfect pitch for this offer, and I didn't. I think a lot of people, they get the no, but then they don't even listen to why they're getting the no. And it turns out that maybe that they use the wrong words to like. I put a tweet out today about cranes, and I was like, I got a buddy trying to move some cranes, and I'm thinking sell cranes. Someone's like, what kind of some kind of logistic thing you need? I'm like, oh my gosh, I was just being fast with the words. I didn't mean move like physically move. I mean sell. But you have to listen to the feedback to see, are they saying no to your offer, or do they even understand your offer?
But 100%. No, and this is what requires, like, what we call it is, we've had salespeople over the years that we divide into one-way communication versus two-way communication. One-way communication is you're sending a million things out to the market. Two-way communication is you're actually having discussion. And you might find, for example, like, Scott, we would sponsor that. We would buy that service if you did it this, and that way. And then we have to decide, are we wanting to make those adjustments, or does that work for the business we're in or not? You follow me? And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't.
So let's say someone's listening right now and they go, okay, you guys talk about sales and staff and all this stuff. I understand that perhaps my business isn't great, but I want to make it great. I want to kind of grow to the next level. Is it sales? Is it hiring? Is it strategy? Like, what is the most important lever that owners need to pull to get their business to the next level without knowing, the person? Just
Yeah. What I really think about is really a couple different things. And I think they're all important, but I think when I focus on building businesses to start with, I think about sales and execution. Sort of, are we taking care of customers? Are we, whatever product we're delivering, whatever service we're doing, is there really value to the customer? And do I have salespeople that are actually out there talking to enough customers to build the business? And I think we are a big believer in building a business that we figure out what are the 2 or 3 core areas we have to be great in, that we stack all of our resources around those core areas. So in building one of our media companies, we were very much along the lines of, we had to build a great sales team and we had to build a great journalism team. And we spent a ton of time building those 2 pieces out. Accounting, CFOs, we outsourced. We outsourced the phone service. We outsourced everything we could outsource for as long as we could until we needed to. So we wanted to stack resources around what was important. In most businesses, that's going to be customer acquisition and taking care of customers. So it's both the, we call it in media business key account management. Do we have people really delivering for accounts, taking care of accounts, and do we have people really selling? And then obviously in Becker's Healthcare, we're in the events business too. So we had to build out a great events team over time. That really took care of putting on great events and great, and great meetings.
So you mentioned events. I just got to ask on that tangent. The big argument right now is that live events are coming back in person. Is that what you guys have seen?
Well, that's been very much the direction since COVID, yes. Because
Yeah.
people, like, at the end of the day, in a world of information overload, where there's so many different places people are getting information, they more and more, again, want to see people in person. Both it helps motivate people, it helps connect people, and they want to see their customers in person, potential customers in person. So we've seen, yes, I think throughout the sort of media world, the event world, live events have had a huge comeback, which has been great the last couple of years, and that will last for a certain amount of time until that probably gets saturated in some way.
Yeah. Well, I think earlier you talked about the high ticket market. And one thing that I've theorized is in the high ticket, and especially the really high ticket world, if you're not building out trusted referral networks, trusted partners, people that can vouch for you, the amount of AI that's going to say that this person's good or this person's bad, people are going to want to know, well, who does Scott say is good? Who does Ryan say is good? That's what they're going to want to know. And so you really have to double down on meeting people, networking with them, building that trust so that you can get them to refer your business over. Now, depending on the size and scale, maybe referrals, you can't live and die by that. But the live event, all that stuff, I think that AI is going to push us back a little bit for high ticket stuff to where you want to know, is the person you're talking to actually qualified to do the work? And so you want a recommendation from a Scott or someone like that.
Yeah, no, 100%. We always thought about in building businesses, one of the most important things you could have is what we call a reference account, meaning a customer that's working with you that people respect. Like, for example, if I'm buying technology, I never want to be, the first question I have for anybody that we're buying technology from is, who else uses it and can I talk to them?
Yeah, right.
I never want to be a first user. I just don't, that's just not me. I never
Mhm.
want to be a first user. I don't have $1 billion, $2 billion companies, $10 billion
Mhm.
companies where I can afford to take chances on a $100 million technology purchase. I want to make sure if I'm buying something significant or using something or wasting our team's time, that somebody else is using it and can rave about it. And I found it building a law practice. We at one point, the first big reference customer was a national surgery center chain that was really well respected. And that led to a lot of other people wanting to use us in building a healthcare media company. It was having a couple large device companies work with us and people saying, oh, we want to be in front of the same audience. That obviously works for them. So we want to be with them. And it's, we find having reference customers, we call them reference accounts that sort of you could point to and say, it's why so many people in their advertising will do things like they'll be on with one of their customers. That's what vouches for that they're, a good people to work for. But I think like, I don't want to buy anything without talking to somebody who's an actual customer of theirs, who's not their family member, not their cousin, but that really can vouch for it. They're good to
Right.
work with, and they're helpful.
Right. Okay. Is this final question for me? Is this the last book for you? Do you have more books in the future?
So this is my 7th book. So bear with me on this because
Yeah.
four of them were 100 years ago and were healthcare books when I was really building a healthcare practice and a healthcare media business and a reputation at the time as a healthcare transactional lawyer. Fast forward to 5 years ago, I started writing books again. I swore over the last 20 years, I would never write a book again because it's exhausting. It takes a lot of time and energy. So I got motivated a few years ago as I was trying to, for all practical purposes, to bridge the gap between being a healthcare business leader and a general thought leader and a bunch of other reasons. Wrote a first book a few years ago around building businesses called Blocking and Tackling. So this first book came out so poorly in terms of my own grading of it that I couldn't send it to anybody. I couldn't provide it to anybody. It just really was not good. I didn't like it. I still have some in the closet. But I was trying to collect a lot of my business and investment thoughts in one place for usefulness, and because I constantly come back to the same business thoughts and the same investment thoughts. So I went and wrote a second book. This is the second book, the Entrepreneur's Edge, which is how to build, grow, and manage your business. And this came out a few years ago. maybe 2 years ago, and this was better. The first one was a D. The
Mhm.
second one was a B minus C. It combined still business and investing thoughts. It wasn't just focused on business, but it was good. It wasn't embarrassing to send out. I was able to send it to lots of people. It didn't become like a USA Today bestseller. We didn't try and become a New York Times bestseller, all those things, but it was better. But then I went and got professional feedback on that book and read a book by a guy, Cal Newport. Cal
Oh
Newport
yeah.
wrote a book called Deep Work.
Yep.
In Cal Newport's book, there are two things that sort of drove me to go back and write this book now that did become a USA Today bestseller, Building Great Businesses. Excuse me for the props. But
No,
but
it's no. Please, please.
what drove it was I went and got professional feedback on book 2, the one I just showed you, Entrepreneur's
Mhm.
Edge. And I was sort of told two things. I got professional feedback from a professional editor, writer who said, look, here's what you're missing here. It's got a lot of great information, but you don't really tie in the story of it with it. So it's sort of like a lot of platitudes, but harder to read because it doesn't really tell the story behind the businesses and what you're trying to do. Second is you combine building a business and investing, and they're really two different subjects. You ought to pick a path, go down one or the other. And a friend who read the book too said the same thing. I like the book, but it really doesn't dig enough into your story. It more just, it tells business advice without
Yeah.
sort of intertwining the two. So went back and wrote this book. And this book we've gotten nice feedback on for readability and hopefully for advice and business thoughts and business thinking. But that's what drove me to write this third book. So I would say the first business book, years ago were the 4 healthcare books. The first business book, a D. The second business book, a B, B minus. Hopefully this book's an A minus, B plus. It's not Jim Collins or Peter Drucker, but hopefully
Right.
it's like, it's a really nice move in the right direction. We hope people enjoy it. We've gotten really nice feedback from people that have read it. It's an easy read. It's 200 pages. It's available on Amazon. We purposely priced it at like $22 for the hardcover, which when you talk to publishers, your publisher wants to price it at 27, 28, $30. We're much more interested in being accessible and
Yeah.
being readable, and trying to connect with people. So will I write another book? The Cal Newport thing. So I read Cal Newport's book a couple years ago, and he has this concept that so many of us do things like so many different little things that are dopamine fixes, like one more tweet on X,
Yeah.
one more LinkedIn thing, one more discussion. And it led me to this concept of I'd much rather do deeper things less often than everything being a dopamine fix. So
Mm.
even today, the highlight of my day, and this is not to blow smoke up you, but the highlight of my day is having an hour-long discussion with you about something which is much deeper than 22-second tweets back and forth with people,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
or me doing, 5-10 minute interviews with people in healthcare or business. This to me
Yeah.
is like this is a substantial hour well spent where I get to visit with somebody who's interesting, who's growing, who's building, and it's a great pleasure. But it comes out of that Cal Newport book. I'd much rather do one of these today than 5 different podcasts for 10 minutes each or 15 minutes each, even though the 15-minute each ones might be listened to by a lot of people. This is more satisfying. So
Well,
we
I've
really
enjoyed it as
enjoy
well.
it.
So thank you for the kind words. And John Claiborne, thanks for tuning in. John's a good dude, super well connected. I do think that the dopamine hit, the problem with the dopamine hit, for all the reasons that you mentioned, but also with business, there's kind of general advice, but then there's so much nuance, especially like with M&A. There's just all kinds of nuance, and so Twitter, LinkedIn, it doesn't really matter. It can just trick you into thinking that it's 1 + 1 = 2 every time. And it's like, well, if you're a CEO and you can do sales, that's not the same as a CEO who's a great operations and can't do sales. Like there's just different
100%.
paths.
There's a million different things, but it's like you can get a million different pieces of M&A advice on Twitter, but you sit down seriously with 2 M&A professionals that really guide people through transactions, and you learn a ton more. And what you find in interviewing investment bankers, interviewing M&A people, we used to say that about lawyers. The further away you are from court, the better the case looks. And as you get as you get closer to court, the lawyer says to you things like, "Oh, if I'd known this, if I'd known that." Now it's a tougher case. And investment bankers, you have to talk to a few of them to understand that they really understand your business, really understand the value of the business, and aren't blowing smoke at you. "Oh, your business is worth 15 times. Please sign here so I can engage and represent you." And then find, 6 months later, it's really worth 7 times because, "Oh, if I would have known this and that," if you listen to Twitter, every business is worth 15 times, every business is worth that. And if you've got a very small business, it's very hard to get a multiple for it because they're reliant on you. But having a few deep discussions is worth more than 100 Twitter pieces of advice on M&A.
No, I'm with you. And when we're doing our M&A stuff, it's 10 million of enterprise value and up. And like we had a call yesterday with a group, and one of the things for me that I kind of stressed to the owners was they have a few businesses and they want to sell one. And I was like, well, and their lawyer was on the call. I was like, okay, we need to make sure that if they're going to keep these other 2 or 3 companies, that the non-compete will be enforceable when the buyer looks at it. Because if the buyer looks at it and goes, well, you're keeping these and you're going to sign a non-compete, but you're really going to compete with me, then the deal will blow up. And so it's like, there's that kind of nuance. But is that relevant to every M&A deal you see? No. So you can't just say that, So it's one of those things that just comes up on a call. You're like, oh, you got to explore this. And so I'm very much with you that it's the more you can talk to people, the more you can listen, the more nuance you can give them, the better chance of success you'll have.
I love that. And Ryan, what a great pleasure visiting with you. But it's really that concept of deep work, whether deep or not. An hour spent in a serious conversation, to me, is more valuable than a million different 5-minute or quick hits. Just a total pleasure. And that
Likewise.
So anyways, a fantastic pleasure to visit, truly.
Likewise, people go check out the book, Amazon, anywhere else for the book.
Amazon, any place you buy books. Building Great Businesses, Great Momentum, Overcome Setbacks, and Scale with Confidence. It's available wherever you buy books. Amazon's easy, of course, but any place is great. More importantly, if you buy it, please leave a review. I'm learning the game of publishing. It is the game of book distribution, but it's fascinating, fantastic.
Scott, thank you so much for your time today.
Ryan, thank you. What a great pleasure to visit with you. Thank you so much, sir. Take care.